Hi, I was asked to give an example of how we could use Excel to set up one of these word problems and do conversion factors. Now, pen and paper works great for this, and in fact you'll see here on the screen I've got it set up as a pen and paper problem to start with. Then I'm going to show you how you could tweak this to make it into something where you could solve it in Excel. Now, don't rely on that only. Make sure that you're working with your calculator so that during an exam you're already accustomed to using the physical calculator in your hand in that room, so you know exactly where every button you need is put, and so you can quickly get through your calculations when time is of the essence. Now, still, this is a useful process skill for us, both in the lecture and the lab side of class, so I wanted to have a good example for it. You can hear that I've got a little thunder making things spicy behind me. Okay, now, the problem is set up to say, an acetaminophen suspension for infants contains 80 milligrams per 0.80 milliliters of suspension. The recommended dose is 15 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. How many milliliters of the suspension, of the suspension should be given to an infant weighing 20 pounds? Assume two significant figures throughout. Now, what I've started to do up here, and you see it in the image I've already laid out, I had 20 pounds of body weight. I know that I need to get from pounds to kilograms, and you'll also notice that I've gone ahead and I've put in body. I can use that designator to say pounds of body weight, or however I want to phrase that, pounds body. As long as I have that throughout, I can cross-cancel that just like I would do with the unit. And that's going to be a really useful thing for us later in the semester, where instead of just saying body, perhaps we're talking about something like, moles of, or pounds of sodium. We can actually put the chemical species in and cross-cancel chemical species the same way as I'm doing here. Now, I'm going to go ahead and use the body weight or acetaminophen or suspension throughout this problem. So 20 pounds body weight. I convert that to kilograms by saying 2.2 pounds equals 1 kilogram, right? That's from our conversion tables. Now, the problem also tells us that 15 milligrams of the acetaminophen solution should be given per 1 kilogram of body weight. Now, it doesn't have the number 1 there, but we know that it's saying 15 milligrams per kilogram. That means per 1 kilogram, right? Now we can put that in as a conversion factor. 15 milligrams acetaminophen for 1 kilogram of body weight. Next up, we take the last remaining conversion factor, and we say that 15 milligrams of acetaminophen, we are going to pair that up with the 80 milligrams of acetaminophen, right there, that are in 0.80 milliliters of suspension. So we can use that as our final conversion factor. We cross-cancel our way through it, and we get to our final answer here where we say we're in milliliters of suspension. We go ahead and we grab our calculator, we type it all in, and we're in great shape. How can we do something analogous using Excel? Now for that, I've already laid out the problem underneath this. Let me just slide this image out of the way. You can see here I've set it up exactly the same way, except I have a different mass to start with. Let me just fix that. Okay, so 20 pounds body weight. Notice that I have the number in a separate cell than my units. That's essential. No text can be in the same spot as where you're going to use in a calculation. But it's great to still keep it there so that you have everything there so you can make sure things are done correctly, right? So 20 pounds of body weight, 2.2 pounds of body weight is related to 1 kilogram body weight. 1 kilogram of body weight has 15 milligrams of acetaminophen. All of this is just like we had in the conversion factors below, but notice that I'm being really rigorous to keep my numbers separated from any text. Now at the end of the problem, here's the nice thing I can do. Anytime you want it to do the math, you say, hey Excel, you do the math by hitting the equal sign. Now what you can do is you can either start typing these numbers like 20 divided by 2.2 times 1. You can hit enter and it'll give you numbers, but that's wasting its power. Instead, if you click equals, you can actually just click on each of these numbers and it's going to create a cell reference. Notice this number is in B2. If I click it, it just says now B2. I want to divide it by the 2.2, so I hit divided by 2.2. Notice it put the cell reference in. For rigor, I'll go ahead and I'll still say times this, just in case we ended up plugging in a different relationship later on. Divided by this times this divided by that times this. And notice that it has it all color-coded so that you can quickly visualize what's going on in the problem, right? If I were to click up here in this editing bar, it'll keep all this, and later on, actually, I have to enter first. But if I come back here and I click in, you'll notice it shades it just the same way. We can also double-click into the cell to edit, and it will let us do the same thing. I'm going to hit the escape button, though, so I don't change anything that I've done. Notice that it's doing the entire math for me, and it's getting the same answer I would do with my calculator. Now I'll just go ahead and, for completion's sake, I'm going to write in my abbreviation over here for milliliters of suspension. And you say, great, so you're telling me I can do this with a calculator, and I know how to do it with a calculator, and I still have to think through everything right down here, but instead of a calculator I can use something else. Well, why do I want to do that? Well, suppose you're having a little trouble with this one, and you're figuring out how to solve this problem, so you worked through an example in the textbook where it showed you all the math. And once you worked with it a lot, you really understood it, and then you decided to try another problem. So you did it from scratch longhand, and you want to check your work. Suppose you decided to see how much is needed for a 30-pound large toddler, I guess, right? So we type in 30 over top of that number, and we hit enter. Look over there. It just updated the number for me automatically. That is a really useful thing about doing the math in Excel. It lets you have it happen pretty painlessly. Now, I also wanted to show another reason that this is a great tool, especially when you get to the lab side of class. And for this, I'm going to make up a few numbers. Let's suppose that we're doing some sort of a density experiment. Let's say that we're going to measure out 10 milliliters. Well, we know it to be 10.00 milliliters. Oh, look at that. It didn't keep my sig figs. What you can do, see these two buttons right here under the word general? This little drop down? This will let you pick your number format, if you want a currency or a date or percentages or whatever. Right underneath that is a button where you can expand and contract the number of shown places. Now I'm showing 10.00 for my milliliters. Let's go ahead and call this column volume, and we'll specify it's in milliliters. Notice how this is a little bit too long. If I want to make it look prettier, I can do wrap text. I can even center that if I want. But notice that numbers always start out by default as right aligned. That way you can make sure that they're not accidentally treated as words. Words always start out left aligned. Suppose that I had accidentally typed this as 10.00 and accidentally hit another decimal point. That doesn't look like a number anymore. It's going to treat that as text and leave it on the left, so I can spot that there's a problem with that. Now suppose I was trying to make this a nice easy experiment workup. I put in 20, 30, and 40 for all the measurements that I was going to do in the lab. Well, let's go ahead and give it some sig figs. Let's highlight all this. Let's go ahead, and if you just click one button and click another, you can kind of go back and forth until finally it's going the direction you want. I've got all my volumes in. Next up, let's go ahead and put in some masses. Let's say that my mass was, I don't know, let's just say 10.42, maybe 20.14, or 12, yeah. 30.14, yeah, we'll do that one. And then 40.40. But it's going to trim the sig figs, so we have to specify sig figs again. No big deal though, right? Now, what do we do as far as density goes? For density, it's going to be milligrams per liter. So I can hit equals, actually I guess I should be saying grams per liter, since I already specified grams, right? Let me just quickly fix that. Sorry, it's the fourth time I've done this video because things didn't save properly. All right, so I'll do grams divided by volume. Oh, and I also have that as milliliters. Let me just fix that one too because I'm being retentive about it. There we are. Now this unit matches this unit, and that one matches that. We're back in good shape, right? Neat. You just showed me a whole lot of work to do the same thing. Same responses earlier, right? But guess what? If you grab this little square box in the corner, you have it highlighted, and drag it down, it's going to copy paste it all the way down. Let me just go ahead and show you on this last cell. If I click into here, notice that it has both of these slid down from where they used to be. So it's going to automatically move all those references so that it's doing the math problem that you actually intend for it. Now you want to double check it because it doesn't always do it intelligently, but it's usually pretty good. On here, I should go ahead and get my significant figures as well. There we are, 4 sig figs. Matches up. Hey, look at that. I just managed to do most of my data work up very quickly. Most of that was narration time, right? Suppose I also needed to have my average and my standard deviation. Helps if I can type. Now you can't just hit the cursor to go back like I did unless you hit an extra button on your keyboard. For your purposes, while you're learning, just go ahead and use your mouse to click that in. But just to keep things simple for myself, I'm using the cursors and hotkeys a little bit there. But as you learn, you can add those in later on. Now suppose you wanted the average of those values. You can say equals, open up a parenthesis, right? We'll do this plus that plus that plus that, close our parenthesis, and divide it by 4, because we have to divide with our average by the number of values that were in it, right? We hit enter. Hey, look at that. That's the average value. That visually looks right. Looks like it's going to be right there in the center of those values. Guess what? There's a faster way. That number's right, but look at this. And I'll do it to the side so you can see they get the same answer. I can just tell Excel, hey, why don't you use a cool command called average? It doesn't have to be in all caps, but it makes it easier to keep track. So it's good to do. You open a parenthesis. Now see how it's telling you this little tooltip? Number 1, number 2, on and on. What you can do is highlight all the numbers you want it to average, close your parenthesis, hit enter, you're done. You can do it for however many values you need. It'll average everything. How about your standard deviation? Oh, that equation's a bear. Or we can do STDEV. There's other nuanced versions, and you'll know about them if you've taken a stats class. For our purposes, this is a good one. I highlight these numbers, close it, hit enter, voila, done. Now, of course, if we want to make it even prettier, we can do wrap text. We can decide we want everything to be centered. I can quickly go ahead and put borders around this so it looks nice. Maybe even put some borders around that. Since those are results, maybe I throw a bold border around that. Look at that. In the space of 10 seconds, I've been able to reformat this to look like a fairly professional table. If you start using this as a tool, it can very rapidly give you good results. But notice, I was able to do this problem pretty quick and easy based on my handwritten paperwork. Now in the lab class, guess what? You need to show a sample calculation anyway. You show this is your sample calculation. You set this up to do the math for you for the rest. Congratulations, you're done with that set of data analysis. You come down to the next part. You set your rest of your experiment up. You make this. Even if you take the time to make it pretty, it takes you 5 minutes. You are now done with your data analysis. This is a really powerful tool versus just using a calculator. And it's even better than using a calculator to do the math and then typing it here as a word processor. So I wanted to show you how you can use this to get some leverage, to really get these things done professionally, nicely, easily, and correctly. With that, I'll go ahead and I'll stop the video.